Hey, what's going on, people? It's DJ Sketch, and welcome back to the channel. If you saw the last video, which was the top 5 best games of 2019, you may have been aware that a follow-up video, the top 4 worst of 2019, was going to be right around the corner. The decade is almost over. Luckily, this year being 2019, I didn't play too many really bad games, but there were a few that were they were pretty stinky, I will admit. And before we get into those, there's only 4 of them, so I'm going to give a couple honorable mentions, or in this case, dishonorable mentions, to the following games because I either passed on them because I knew they just weren't going to be good, or I just didn't have time to get around to it, which also kind of worked out to my benefit before we get started with this countdown. So, Wolfenstein Youngbloods. Just seeing the coverage of that alone was enough to put me off of that game, so I didn't bother. And that was also kind of a bummer because that's probably the worst Wolfenstein game that's in existence. And that says a lot because honestly, there's really not too many of those games that were bad. Those were all really good. But Youngblood's by far the worst of that series. And it's been going on for a while, so that says a lot. And a lot of high profile names on this just honorable mentions list too. That's any precursor as to what's to come. And Contra Rogue Corps. Again, this one I just didn't bother. I saw the trailer, I see a panda with a chain gun, and I hear weapon cooldown in a Contra game. Nah, dog, you lost me. So that's all we're gonna say about that. Fallout 76. I know this came out last November, but it seems like as months went by, they just found new ways to fuck that game up even further. And a subscription service, Bethesda, you guys are nuts, man. Y'all great. You wrong for that, as some people might say. And last but certainly not least on the, Fallout 76. Jump Force. Namco Bandai was batting 1,000 for the most part last year and the year before, but yeah, Jump Force, that's gonna be a nah, dog. You can miss me with that Jump Force. But enough about that. So let's go ahead and get into entry number 4 on our worst of list for this year. And this was kind of a surprising one. I was hoping this one wouldn't have been on the list. I actually had to kind of think about this one for a bit. But Far Cry New Dawn. This one, I had pretty high hopes for in the beginning, and I purposely didn't watch any reviews until after I finished my run of this back in, I believe it was May of this year. And at first, I didn't think it was that bad. Yes, the pacing felt artificially stilted due to the new leveling system, which was a hot crock of shit. I mean, pretty much every other Far Cry game except for this one, you could literally finish it either without doing anything, or you could basically just kind of do it at whatever rate you wanted, and you could kind of pick what you wanted to do first. So this is the first one where the option of choice, with the exception of 2, was taken away from you basically. You really had to do missions in a certain order and get it all on a certain level, and if you didn't, you were gonna get bodied just going into different areas that wasn't at your level yet, quote fingers. Man, at first, honestly, like I was saying, I didn't think it was that bad at first, and yeah, the antagonist, the 2 sisters, it wasn't the most exciting duo in the world, but hey, I've seen worse. And the game itself, it wasn't awful, it just got really boring towards the little spirit quest bits where you have to use a little lantern thing and line up the little shard, which if you're not in the right pixel, the shit will not trigger. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but also it just felt clunky. This was kind of rushed out of the door, but at the same time, this was a year behind Far Cry 5, and there was coincidentally no DLC for Far Cry 5, at least nothing really major, because this game was right behind it. Shocker, I know. Technically, this game had some issues. I mean, the level system was one of them, and mostly all that did was just pad out the game. I don't really know. I have an idea as to why they may have done this, but at the same time, it just made the game feel longer when it didn't really need to. And once you got to levels 3 and 4, basically your character was almost god tier. It's kind of like how in the original Far Cry, once you get injected with the stuff at the lab, all of a sudden your character's badass. But that's more or less how this is, but also at the same time, once you got to that level, the game was basically over. So I mean, it would have worked out a little bit better if this were implemented earlier in the game and you got more traits that you could just kind of fill your character out with, but that's just not how they wanted to do it for whatever reason. And after that point, out of the 15 or so hours that this game runs, those last really 2 to maybe 5 hours depending on your skill level, it's a pushover after that point because you're just super OP. And like the pacing and progression were just all kinds of just fucked in this entry, to be completely honest. And overall, like, it just made the game forgettable in the end of it. It's by far not the worst thing I played this year, but it was far from the best, considering it's a Far Cry game too, because I've kind of gone back and forth with these. Like Far Cry 1, that was great. Far Cry 2, I wasn't as crazy about it. I don't know why, because that game really wasn't that bad either. Far Cry 3 was the juice. Far Cry 4 also wasn't really crazy. I mean, it looked cool, but I wasn't crazy about it. Far Cry 5, it's alright. Primal, never played it. But Far Cry New Dawn, it just wasn't that good, to be honest. I mean, it was okay, but also at the same time, out of like the 3 main Wasteland like shooter games that came out, this, Rage 2, and Borderlands 3 being like the main 3 that I remember. I guess Fallout 76, if you even want to call that piece of shit a game. But out of the 3 decent ones, this one was the worst. And it pains me to say that, because I had high hopes for that game initially. But that game is nowhere near as bad as Ubisoft's follow-up to the Ghost Recon series, Wildlands, with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Like, woof. This was the first time I played a Ghost Recon game since the PS2 and OG Xbox days. And at first, I wasn't having a terrible time with it, but after playing the beta and then seeing that the release was less than a week away, actually I think it was like a couple days away by the time I finished the beta, and honestly it raised some questions, like how is this a beta test if the game is basically already shipped and is more or less like just sitting in retail stores right now, and how are they going to improve this within less than a week of release? And also, how can a new Tom Clancy game be coming out only a few months after Division 2 play this clunky and badly in like a lot of instances? The big thing was like, the most importantly, like, why would you develop a video game only to release like really aggressive monetization things with it, to the point where you could actually buy your way to the end with time savers and like the numerous others like ridiculous cosmetics, and like just like the stuff was not really that different. But at the same time, like, there were time savers that were basically in place so you could pretty much just like press X to win. That's what it boiled down to, like, ultimately. And that, and like, you know, these were all questions I had playing through this demo, which was really what it was for Ghost Recon. And then saw the release date, and I had my mind made up, and I suggested right off the rip, don't buy this. Like, do not buy this. Maybe when it's like in like the deep discount bin. But yeah, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, pass. And even Ubisoft even came out later saying that, like, yeah, we rushed it, it was a flop, and we're over it. We're just not gonna do shit with this game. And basically, more or less, like, DLC or really any updates, maybe stability updates came out, but that was about it. And even that, like, it's been pretty quiet as far as Ghost Recon as of late. And it's a shame, considering that the game, like, it could have been interesting. I mean, like, environments looked okay, even on console. And, like, the gameplay, like, again, like, it wasn't awful, it just felt kind of shitty, especially compared to, like, Division 2, which was awesome. And those were only a few months apart. Also, an honorable mention and shout out to Division 2 as well. That game was fucking tight. And the voice acting, it was about as good as like the lead up to a skin flick scene. So hey, I guess they tried. But the bugs in this also too were just like beyond out of control. So there were a lot of reasons to not enjoy this game. But also, like, if you bought it, I mean, that's if you enjoyed it, cool. But this one, like, I had my mind made up off the rip. I'm gonna pass on that one. But next one, number 2. This is a even more special case here. Anthem. Oh boy, where do we even start with this one? So, much like Ghost Recon, this game had a beta test and also had a similar issue with the release date not being far behind its test dates, and even more interesting that it was a tiered release date depending on which edition you ordered or pre-ordered, so on and so forth. This game not only overpromised and then severely underdelivered, but it's open world X gameplay into the wild kind of deal. Like, it just, once it actually got out there, it just was not well received. Like, the flying was the best part of the game, period. Just like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, that was legit the best feature in the game. But then everything else, it just, it just felt so half-assed. Like, the story was whack, the characters were extremely forgettable, that are just really annoying, and like choices with the dialogue didn't matter. The gameplay itself was repetitive, and the end game was non-existent. Like, there was nothing to do after you finished the main game. And there was one quest, like, basically when I saw it, you had to like run, I guess what was like 100 strikes. Like no. Like, there's nobody even playing this fucking game. Like, why am I about to like just sink more time into something like this? Like, it just, there's no point. This, once again, like, again, I know I said this, mentioned this in the review as well when I reviewed this back in, I guess that must have been March sometime. Because back when Killzone, like the first Killzone released on the PS2, like, that company was gassing that game up so hard, saying like, yeah, this is the Halo killer. Like, Halo can't do shit to us. Like, we're about to like crush this game. But then, lo and behold, when it dropped, it was absolutely not the Halo killer. Like, not even fucking close. Like, Anthem is guilty of the exact same infraction, except worse. Much, much worse. They claimed they were working on this for 7 years, I guess for the length of the project prior to release. But then in reality, it turned out to be only 18 months. They spent 5 of those 7 years, or 4.5 of those years rather, possibly even 5.5. Who really knows, to be honest, trying to figure out what they actually wanted the game to be, and then they slap it in front of a EA exec. It's like, yeah, it's cool. All right, let's go with that. And that was day one of like the 18-month cycle where they actually put the work into the game, and that's not good. That's not good. And the roadmap itself, like, as far as content that was supposed to come into the game eventually, more or less never saw the light of day, considering like resources were pulled from Anthem's project to other projects. I know they're still working on Dragon Age, but they've been also very quiet about that as well. And also the future DLC, especially the much fabled Cataclysm event, just flat out never made it past test audiences. Like, and they basically, the people that did play it were basically like, yeah, this is kind of whack too, so whatever. But rumor has it BioWare is trying to overhaul this game, and unless it's a drastic set of changes that actually reworks essentially everything in this game, this is still just going to continue to be a disappointment and might just be better left in obscurity, where it has been like the last 6 months, or really, like, they came out in February, so 10 months rather, because that game died almost immediately. But not without reason. I mean, there's a reason why people play Destiny and Warframe, because those games are significantly better. Well, BioWare, like, you tried with this one. You tried, but much like Mass Effect Andromeda, it just wasn't nearly as good as what it was being chalked up to be. So it could have been cool. It could have been. And number one, I'm sure this one's not gonna, also much like my number 2 and number 1 pick for the best of video just a few days ago, this probably is not going to be a surprise, because I've already been bitching about this game a bunch, and it just came out, and I was severely disappointed with this one. This is by far like the biggest disappointment of the year to me. I mean, this is all just my opinion, so you can take that for what you will. It's totally okay if you disagree. Call of Duty Peekaboo Warfare 2019, my bad, Modern Warfare 2019. So like I said, like, if you've been following this channel for a little while, or even this like the last couple months, like, you know I play COD games basically every year, even though I find reasons to hate most of them, some justifiably so, like in this instance here. But after playing this beta, first thing I've said was like, yo, if this is like the best you've got, it's going to be a difficult climb for this game. It's going to be. And what do you know? Somehow my actual, like, my biggest fear of the game actually came through, but somehow it was even worse than I could have ever imagined it being. And somehow this is the highest selling and most played COD game of the generation. Bruh, come on. Whatever, like I was born yesterday. And just the design choices of this game, and the fact the multiplayer has protected lobbies that cater to campers and people that aren't good at this game. I mean, just flat out, people that are not good at it and will never progress because they're never going to be challenged with this game. Like, it's baffling. Like, honestly, this is one thing I just don't understand as far as why some video games are going this direction today. And the mechanics, in theory, it sounds like it should be tight, but it's just one more thing that's just going to frustrate people that, especially ones that have been playing this game for a long time, they're just not going to be into it. And they're just like, I mean, it's one of those things, like, it's cool when you do it to somebody else, but then as soon as the tables turn, it becomes real frustrating. But at the same time, it's like when you're peeking through a doorway and you can't see, like, there's no indication that a barrel or anything else is coming through that doorway, it kind of defeats the purpose of like these new shiny mechanics that, quite frankly, I mean, they're just annoying. It sounds cool on paper, but then in execution, it's pretty fucking garbage. You know, and newcomers and maybe even vets, like, maybe they'll enjoy this. Like, I don't know. Like, apparently this is like the most played card of the generation. Blah blah blah. But still, at the same time, like, this is like my absolute least enjoyed game this year, considering it's only been out slightly over 2 months now, like just barely. And I'll admit, like, they've tried some things to spice this game up. They're trying, like, you know, they added in like some 10-year-old maps in the free season pass, and you know, only to add new stuff to it that basically ruins the flow of an already bad game. You know, they just pepper it in, you know. And also this whole thing with the battle pass, which I brought up just last video. It's $150 for one season of, you know, just basic stuff, but just like micro and macro transactions that are borderline useless. And also, this is just like insulting in some instances, like this kill death ratio watch. Like, that's just an insult. And also the fact that if you don't buy the season pass, like, and you grind out that battle pass shit, like, you don't even get like 90% of it. Like, let that sink in. And if you don't believe me, take a look for yourself if you have this game, because Redbox just discontinued running games, so you basically have no option but to borrow from a friend, or if you see them playing it, take a look at that battle pass if you don't believe me. Also the fact that, for the most part, player feedback, this is the big one, player feedback going directly to these developers is basically ignored en masse. Like, but the second personalities like Ninja that don't give a shit about Call of Duty make a comment about the game and then proceed to shit on the developer, saying that their game is trash, but then the developer is super all on the nuts, dude. Like, what does that say as far as like what they plan to do with like the rest of this game? Because Ninja throws out a suggestion, they were on it saying like, oh yeah, it's coming back. Like, they had info ready to rip, like within about maybe 7 or 8 hours, just for Homebrew to come back and like bag on them hard, mind you, after that. But that's the people to listen to. This is who they listen to. And the fact that they want to go about it that way, like, it's pretty much like telling your community that with this game already being on life support, that they don't give a shit about the community. I mean, they don't. Honestly, they don't. They got the money. They don't care. But, you know, again, like I was saying earlier, this could have been way better. But I can settle also with like not playing this very often or not at all, unless some drastic changes are made, much like I was with like World War II, because they completely overhauled that game when Condrey and Schofield, or whoever the other one is, it doesn't really matter at this point, they don't work for that company anymore. But when they left and the other guy came in, the game got playable at least. I mean, I still am not like ultra juiced on World War II, but I can honestly say I'm way more juiced on that and fucking Black Ops 4 than this game, Modern Warfare. And again, if you like it, that's cool, but at the same time, it's like, maybe they'll do something with it. I mean, it's still early days, but at the same time, clock's ticking, Activision, and it's really ticking for you, Infinity Ward especially, because this is like, what, the 3rd bomb in a row? You know? So, we'll see. I mean, the campaign's good, I'll give you that, but even that's not like anything groundbreaking. And I know that we even went longer on this one than the top 5 video, but if you made it through this video, I appreciate you. I do this for you guys, and I hope it helps. I hope this is a resource for you, and if it is, awesome. I guess we're almost there, 2020, so we will see what the next decade has in store for us. It's going to be real interesting, especially that first quarter, because there's some bangers coming out. We'll see if it lives up to the hype or not. And once again, thank you for checking out this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. If I don't see you before the first, Happy New Year. Take care, be safe.